The Puzzle Pieces Podcast, seeing the big picture when the landscape has changed. And your co-host today will be Dr. Danique Dolly. Let's give it up for him. Woo!
Yeah.
And myself, Eunice Mitchell, both of us co-regional directors for the best part of the country, no offense, but the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, all the way through Kentucky. That's where we reign. And that's where we show as much love as we possibly can. But know that the folks on the West Coast, we do love y'all too. We just, we don't live there, which is really the issue. Having said that, I know you were expecting to talk about leadership, and I know that Danique has something he's going to share in a second. And we knew that what was most important, because leaders are leaders, right? And what makes leadership so special is that it is personal, and we lead from a space of who we are. And so that is the same for big picture. I would say that our orientation towards what is best for students, our orientation towards love and care and some other things we'll share, it doesn't make us unique. It's just that we are bold, and maybe it does make us unique. I don't know, Danique might argue that, but I think we want to say it. We don't want to hide it. We want to just feel it. We want that to be on Front Street. So that's what makes this, makes us unique. But the podcast, we thought we'd share our experience as a podcast, where we're talking and chatting about really what's probably on your minds, and leading with that, and allowing you then to process based on maybe something you heard that you liked, something that you didn't like, and you strongly disagree. Like, all of that is fair game, and we love it all. So we thought that might be a way to kind of pursue this workshop, this session. So you're in a podcast if you didn't know it.
That's right.
Something?
That's right. You are in a podcast called Puzzle Pieces.
Nice.
Got the big picture. And in the big picture, there are always puzzle pieces of the puzzle to put together. Yes. And this year, especially, we have some major pieces of the puzzle to put together. And Eunice, I've been thinking about it a lot, because it's like, first of all, let me say who I am.
Do it.
Yeah, all that doctor stuff. My name is Danique. I've been down with big picture back in, I'm going to use years, since 1996. When I started as a intern with Big Picture, and then I became one of the first teachers for Big Picture. What happened afterwards is I stuck with it, stayed a while, graduated some kids, became a principal myself, started my own school somewhere else in Baltimore City. And now I'm back with Big Picture. So, starting a school is rough and fun. And I think one of the reasons we wanted to do this and talk about this with you is it goes back to 1975, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. And he says, wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed, no more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead, Eunice. And then he goes on to say, wake up all you teachers, try to teach a new way. Mm-hmm. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. That was 45 years ago.
Right.
And now look at what is happening to us. So I want to talk about it in the context of like where we are, but where we always have been in this antiquated notion of this thing called school and education.
I think the leadership piece is that we hold, I think in some ways we're in the middle as leaders. You are your school community, your students, your staff, your family see you as, the buck ends with you, and that you, and I think we see ourselves as hosts, and we see ourselves as having an opportunity to shepherd in, support, safeguard the things that we think are most important. But then above sounds like I'm buying into the hierarchical structure, but the district, often many schools are in a district where there's a board for a charter that may not touch as closely the students and their lives. And so there is that tug, but I think being woke in that spirit means that you don't just kind of satisfy folks, but that you ask yourself, what do I really need to be doing? What's the work that needs to be done?
And that is the question I'm thinking about. And I would like us to, all of us to think about, like, what is the work that we should be doing? I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Eunice, like when COVID first happened, early March,
Yep.
right around that, right before April, everybody was like, oh, this is great. This is not great, but this is a time for never go back again. We can redesign, we can do something different.
Right.
But I think they were talking about it, and this is what I would like us to think about, like almost as if it was climbing a hill. Like we can get over this. Or they were thinking about it like, you know, almost like it was a budget situation. But it's not, it's harder than that. And it's not just like climbing a mountain or hiking a mountain, because that would be like, hey, we're traversing something that is hard, but we know what it is, this
Right.
thing called school and leadership.
Right.
But we don't, because the mountain is almost like Mount St. What is it, Helens? The one that blew up? The mountain is blown up.
Right.
There's been a shift. Was it tectonic shifts?
Yeah.
If you have
Yeah.
a tectonic shift,
Bring that science. Bring that science.
I'm a product of science and I'm an English major. Like if you have that, that
Right.
means things spread, things clash, and things ultimately change. So
Yes.
what I'm hearing now, especially, I don't know, you mentioned leaders are in between like a rock and a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. I
you
didn't
want
say
to
it that
start school.
eloquently. You're poetic, so I mean, of course you say it that way.
Yeah, you want to start school, but then how are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what we want to get down to and granular about. Like, what are the details of starting this school when you can't climb the mountain like we used to? And that
Right.
affects everybody. And I think when we understand the paradigm shift, see, I got the water behind me for a reason. You
Oh,
know,
you're being
because it's
deep.
about the waves. It's about the waves of a paradigm shift. A
Mm.
paradigm shift affects everybody who's in the water.
Right.
Everybody.
That's
And
right.
that means if you're in the sea of education, if you're in the arena of education, if we're
Mm-hmm.
all in that same ship, even though we may have different philosophies, we've all been shaken because
Right.
the water affects everybody, including us in big picture. So what does
Woo!
that mean for our work moving forward? And that's
You
what I
are
want to
going
think
deep.
about.
You are going deep in that water. Let's hit them with some of these quotes that you had. I'm going to share my screen again so they can take a look at some of the quotes or this particular quote. And just so that y'all know, we're going to put ourselves on timer. I think Anna might have us so that we stay on time, but we're going to just riff and hopefully some of it works for you. All right. So you want to hit them with this one?
Yes, I think, first of all, if you don't know who Ella Baker is, please go to the books.
Yeah.
She's behind most movements and pushed most leaders to be better and just really, as we're talking about, paradigm shifts. So she says, the system under which now exists has to be radically changed, not liberally changed, not kind of changed, radically changed. This means that we are going to have to think in radical terms. I use the term radical in its original meaning, getting down to and understanding the root cause. It means facing a system that does not lend itself to your needs and devising means by which you can change that system. How are we going to do that, Eunice?
Yeah, I think, sorry, stop sharing. I think it requires us to be brave. It requires us to say, you know what, at the end of the day, I am in this work for families and kids. I'm not in this work for, just simply serving a system. You know what I mean? That's broken or that's behind and not, and it's hard, but I think that's where we have to start. And you have to be ready for whatever is going to come. And I know that's not an easy pill to swallow, and but I think that's what it is. If you're really going to be radical, because it means that you're going to actually be going against the grain. So you got to really muscle up a little bit on that one.
And I think it also causes us to think about what has to change systematically or systemically, but also what do we have to change individually or as a group or as leaders.
Right.
As a leader, you can say, oh, I want this. If the government changes, if the system and structure changes, but what do we have to change now that we are still in the water as the waves are coming by? you know?
Yep.
And so hopefully we can dive into that a little bit today.
So we have some questions that we were going to parcel through if we can. The first one we kind of already started touching on is, what's the challenge before us, right? The thing I was gonna share was really quickly, again, me with the screen. I know y'all gonna be like, this woman with the screen. Is the, what's it, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers in the business world are thinking about COVID as accelerating some trends for transformation. And I thought that was interesting. They use the word adapt to say, you know what, all these things are gonna come out of COVID. So how do we react? And, you know, I don't know that I necessarily think the business world has answers, but the idea that they are thinking about all the things that crises bring, like, for example, around that is asymmetric or that it's asymmetry, that there's going to be no real middle class. So what does that mean? And how does that impact people? Thinking about people going to work, how does that impact our students? They are thinking about for college even, you know, like, are their parents going to be able to support that given this? That there's going to be disruption, that there's going to be issues around. So I just thought that this was an interesting approach. And I wonder in education how we're doing the same thing. How are we thinking through the ripples, as you're describing, that are going to come after or as a result of COVID? And as you've said many times, Danique, that COVID really isn't a one and done, like it's transforming education forever, like not just for the year, not just for opening summer, but forever. So yeah, I thought about that. For me, it's really about how do we prepare for something different, because this year is going to be a lot of exploration, really, because you got to put on something new. And you got to be willing to say, you know what, we're going to fail, we're going to take some risks, but we got to do something different. And I'm expecting that until we get to a better feel. And you know, it's something that we believe in strongly.
Yeah. And I would think about it like, that's down to the, you know, you start the school year, you normally have, I know the math, you got your 180 days plus your 10 days for your staff plus, and then you have your summer planning. And then you can do your new student orientation. Then you do your welcome back to the parents. You do your first day, your first week, your first month, your first quarter. Well, all of that's changed.
Right.
All of that has to be reinvented. If anybody who is in this podcast thinks they're going to do the same thing that they did last year, including us at Big Picture, we're all wrong.
Right.
And so what is that work? And that's what we want to dive into. Down to like, what can we do different?
Yeah, I want to share one more thing. I know you are.
I'm ready.
Wait, I don't know. Now I feel like, okay, here we go. I think the other thing I was thinking about is we had what's it called? The Right Question Institute came to one of our conferences years ago. And I was like, you know what they talked about, you know, we're so focused on answers, but really the world needs us to come up with good questions constantly. We should be constantly asking ourselves questions that inspire us to act, right? So Harvard Business Review also put this thing out right now, really facing towards the business world, but it brought me to the place of like, as leaders, what we're facing is how do we ask the right questions? And so here are some of the ones that Harvard Business Review put on there. Am I being strategic enough? Have I revamped communication plan for my direct team and the organization at large? Thinking about in schools, as these are all super relevant. How might I reset roles and responsibilities to help people to succeed, even for even for your students? Am I keeping an eye on and communicating about the big picture? So how are you talking to folks? And what more can I do to strengthen our culture? So I'm thinking about the staff. So are we asking the right questions? And that should be something as a leader I would wrestle with. What are some questions I need to hold on to for this year? Yes, for the opening, but like, how do I reset my thinking so I have some good questions that I'm going to wrestle with? And I would do it in public, not just privately in my journal. I want my team to see me wrestling with some really important questions.
Oh, I think that's good.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. Like I said, I also think, and you talking about questioning, and I think also it's a mindset thing. I think if this year, as a leader, I don't care if you've been working at a school for 10 to 20 years, I think it's about how do we look at this year almost as the first year.
Yeah.
It's an entrepreneurial year. It's a startup year. And or you just think of it like a movement. Because when you have a movement, when you start a movement, you're not thinking about the cycle of a year. You're thinking about whatever's coming at you and moving forward. So how do you get all your kids and move them forward with your staff as your troops, your troopers, and how are we gonna rock this? Because you're moving from day one to day 180 in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
You know, it's a movement. It's not a cycle. Yeah. I know we
I
got to
love
get
that.
to the
So
launching work.
we're running out of time on our podcast. We want to thank our sponsors, Big Picture Learning. And we have a couple more questions. I feel like we want to give them a little bit about wild principling. Okay. And we want to give them a little bit about the article, which kind of looks at the forward thinking. So we can try to tag team or one person take one or the other. So one of the questions we were grappling with was, and I'm going to share my screen. Years ago, Big Picture Learning, and you, Danique, came up with a concept about being wild. Do you want to share?
Yes.
Am I sharing my screen?
Sure, no problem. I just want to talk through it because it comes from the place of you can't just be tame, lame, and doing the same. You have to be uninhibited to do this job. And you cannot do, you have to know what rules to follow and what rules to put to the side. I'll just say it that way. You have to know how to get your kids' attention, whether it's being calm and cool, or whether it's to stand up on a table. You need to know how to motivate your staff and think differently and get them fired up to be leaders. And this year especially, you have to ride the wave of difference and innovation because the world is wild. So if you're going to be a calm, tame, this is no time for just normalcy because there's nothing normal. So it's time to be wild with it, wild with the love, wild with the different types of leadership, and wild with pushing and thinking about students first and foremost and all the time.
Right. And I think we talk in big picture about how much you are oriented to this, like that this is something that if someone came into your building, came on one of your Zoom staff meetings, let's say, that they would be able to feel love, that they would see that you're a breakthrough leader, always looking for, with moral courage, how to do this work better in a creative way. Building and sustaining your team. And when I think team, it's your learners, your families, how do you do that? And then finally, that you are creating a school environment that is student driven, that is real world, and that's the core of who you are. And even if your school doesn't have that fully, that you are oriented, there's a bias. You're like, Dad, can we make that more student driven? Yo, can we make that more real world? Even when, there are times where for whatever reason, schools have decided that they have to do things to air quotes, stay open. But how do we orient ourselves in this way? And that's how we lead as big picture leaders. So I think it's cool for us to point this out. Allow me to go to another slide here. We asked y'all to take a look at this, an article, Reopening School, What Might It Look Like, written by the Cult of Pedagogy. And there's no real rhyme or reason. It was just a very stimulating piece. And I think that the question we were going to grapple with is what struck you? You want to roll with it, Danique? You want me to roll with it?
You can roll with it. Start it up and I got your back.
Okay. There were 3 parts that she parceled out for us. And the first one, I'll come off of screen share. So I'm going to be looking down at my document. The first one was looking at solutions. And one that got me super excited was the learning plan idea. I know you're going to probably jump on that at some point, Danique, but the idea that a learning plan could be the thing that guides learning for every student, which is what we do in a big picture school. I think maybe in recent years to a lesser degree, like the learning plan has taken a back seat. And it just got me excited because no matter what, at the drop of a dime, that's guiding your learning. So whether you are 100% online or you guys are 100% back in your building, which, I don't know if that's really a realistic goal, but let's say it happens. You're not switching. It's still about the kid. It's still about the learning plan. Got excited about that in part 1 under her solution. She has some other good solutions. In part 2, she looks at other resources. Of course, I got excited about equity and cultural responsiveness, and there were some resources there to do that remotely. But I think it's real easy right now just to follow, to put up some not related to you curriculum that you found online and say, hey kids, here's a unit on whatever. So I think just really encouraging your team and your staff to think about how you meet your students and represent them at all times. So I got real excited about that. And finally, in part 3, there was something, she talked about facing the unknown. I know you got excited about that, Danique, but she talks about having a contingency plan. And I would argue the contingency plan is the plan, but having one. I love the idea of allowing for grief. I don't think you allow people to have grief, but I think you make space. I got really excited about the thought that she was saying, it's not normal. Like, you gotta slow down and allow people to be real and not be so pressured to like feel like teaching is gonna happen, or learning, I should say, is gonna happen just because you want it to. But really allowing for people to be honest about how they're feeling. So I love how she broke those 3 pieces out, and really excited about part 3. If you haven't seen the article, please check it out. It's in the chat. And there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah,
I disagree with the last part though, which she said, at some point we'll go back in person. I was like, maybe not.
Yeah. I
Go
think
ahead.
you made me think there's, you can't use old maps to find your way through new and uncharted territory.
Yep.
And I think that's what this is about. I think it's about, and in the computer world, which we are really in the digital world, they always think that some things will develop with time. So if they complete, first computer, no problem, they'll get better with time.
Right.
I think that's where we are with the learning plan.
Yep.
The individual learning plan. I think it's got its time right now to really be developed. And so you mentioned it. I just think it's everywhere. If we look at even the role of the advisor. In fact, most of the big picture distinguishers are going to come up more and more relative to digital learning and relative to the way the world is now.
Absolutely.
So how do we continue to inculcate some of this into our planning and innovations?
Yes. Oh, and Gigi, you got a question up there. We're going to let you hold that question for a second, because I think we're going to let you talk. Can I really quickly just share something though? And I'm going to be done. And I know we're out of time, but I wanted to share just a few more slides that say, this is what everybody's getting. Back to school, we're still deciding, we're going to reopen, but we're not sure. And I think the challenge is we as school leaders can say, I'm still thinking, I know that there are going to be guidelines, but I'm going to be thinking about, from my heart and out of love, what really matters. I think Maslow can guide our thinking, right? So of course, we're not going to start with up here, self-actualization. Let's get the lessons done that they need to learn. I think really realizing that COVID is really focused on these bottom 2. I saw this thing, which I thought was pretty cool. Are students safe and fed? I know you've been doing that work probably last school year. Do they know that they are loved and missed? Do they have coping skills to deal with crisis and emotion? So like, this is a great way to kind of imagine school and thinking about Maslow and how do we make sure we're caring for folks in that way. I thought that was a cool one. A lot of schools are thinking about, there was a research, and I'm not looking at the actual PowerPoint, that someone did, and they talked about, like, in general, how are schools thinking about this? They're thinking about it in phases. So that's kind of a practice that you're probably seeing already, rotating schedules. But I really like the idea of, or maybe it's personal, attendance. Like, maybe not everyone feels excited about sending their kid back to school for whatever reasons. I have a kid who's severely asthmatic. And as soon as he gets a cold, we might be looking at a hospital stay because his oxygen goes low. So I think his oxidation. So just thinking about, how are you thinking about how you approach and how you share things with your families? I think that's all I got. Oh, if you don't know already, IDEO, it had a challenge. How about we help educators, parents, and students adapt to remote learning while also using the moment to radically reimagine what, I don't know why I keep struggling to see the bottom. Okay. Well, they had this challenge. You can check it out on your own. And here's some of the weird ideas that folks were coming, and not weird, some ideas they were coming up with. One is this course of action where kids get activities sent to them weekly so they can do things at home. This other one, Parency, I thought that was pretty cool, was how do we coach parents, since parents are the ones who have to do most of the schooling. So an app, I think it is, or some sort of way of teaching them. For early learners, again, sending some daily text message to families so that the families can learn how to do things with their kids. And again, since they might be home. So the challenge is, how do you ask a question? How do you come up with something that maybe you haven't done before that is super relevant and needed? I think I'm done.
Cool.
I think we can.
Well, let's get down to it.
I'll leave him with
One
this
thing,
quote, though. I'll leave him with this quote. Is that okay?
yeah, go ahead.
My girl Sonia Renee Taylor, I don't actually know her, but I do know her in my head, said this, and I just thought it was beautiful. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. So with that, I think we want you to think wildly and boldly. Did you want to add something, Danique? I'm done with screen sharing.
No, you got it. You said it. I think we need to think wildly and boldly. This is our, I don't know if we'll ever have an opportunity like this to push as much innovation as possible before they try to seal the boiler room, because the boiler room's busted.
Right.
So this is our opportunity.
Yes. All right.
And I think you at the show, I'm excited about the that grid we created.
Okay. So we're going to do two things right now. We are going to stop talking, which I know you're like, yay, and really get you guys going and having a chance to talk. Let me just share really quickly some group agreements, because I think just want to make sure folks feel comfortable enough to engage in a small conversation with other people. The goal is that in this conversation, you're going to have fun, that you're going to have the spirit of being with people. So you don't necessarily have to agree with everything that they're saying, but just kind of be there for them, hold space for them. And also, we're going to ask you to be vulnerable so that you can get something out of this. So we're just asking you to agree to those. And I can't see everybody, but thumbs up if you really feel like you need to chime in right now and come off mute and say, hey, Eunice, can I add something, or can we please do so now? Otherwise, a thumbs up, and I'll quickly scan the room. All right, good, good, good. Awesome. Okay. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I know y'all love me and the sharing of the screen. One more time. Because I'd like to share a document that we are hoping will guide your, wait a minute, sorry. Guide your conversation in the next couple of minutes. So, bear with me, gotta get out of this.
Yeah, guide the conversation and work, I would say, because we're going to put you to work for thinking of goals and strategies that you can do.
In a second, you're going to get a copy of our agenda, which has a few links. We're going to orient you to a team. Don't worry about that now. It's going to be based on your breakout room. But before I do that, you're going to come back to the document that is that Anna's going to share. And you'll see that each team has the same directions. We're going to ask you to take about 5 minutes to reflect and write some ideas about what you're prioritizing that feels like it's you being wild and innovative, right? We sent an email out, but I apologize if some folks didn't get the email. But we said you could bring something that you're going to use as part of your conversation. You're going to be in a group of about 4 people. And so let me share the document before I share the directions. You're going to set up a priority. So for example, we talked, Danique and I brainstormed, what if summer professional development is really important? However, we did put the 10 distinguishers up here for those of you who are like, yeah, I want to take a whole distinguisher and think about it. Bravely and boldly, go for it. But summer professional development is the one I choose. And then you're going to say, what's a goal that can incorporate wild principling with a focus on, there were 4 different wild principles. We're looking at love, because we believe that one might be really powerful. Again, you could change that if you don't agree. And so as I'm thinking about love and thinking of a goal that is radically, that shows how I'm thinking radically and courageously, it's touching my students and my staff, and it's something I want to create this year. I said, how might I came up with questions. That's what worked for me. How do I build better relationships with staff so that they know I care? How do I use time and timing better? What resources do I need so that love is part of the opening week of school for all students? How can I routinize and make meaning in staff team building experiences? So that was coming up for me under the goals that I'd want to create for my summer PD. Innovative ideas that embrace a new paradigm. So again, think about how are you going to do things differently? And here may feel more like actions, right, Danique?
Yes, strategies and action steps,
Yep.
pretty much, that are innovative and different.
So just real quick, I just put a lack of the use of the professional learning plan that the district gave me. I want to really like think through that. So there's some others there. And then finally, the last column is going to be when you get in your discussions, you're going to be hopefully hearing from folks some feedback, some just thoughts. And you'll be silent during that time when they're giving feedback. So this is a space for you to, if you wanted to, capture some of the things that you're hearing. What's the discussion, Eunice? Okay. So in small groups, you're going to take turns. It's going to feel a little bit rushed and pressured. We apologize, but you'll take about 2 minutes now, I think, because we are 10 minutes behind. So you'll take about 2 minutes or so that you can give the folks what you're hoping to do. So that might be the priority and the goals and your innovation, what's on this table. You're going to share a little bit of context, and then you're going to be quiet. Your team members then, for about 7 minutes or 6, let's do 9-minute rounds, guys, will react to your presentation, and they'll focus on what you're asking them to give feedback on. And that's it. The presenter doesn't get a chance to come back. Why? Because hopefully when we come all back, we're going to ask you just to share out one thing that you're taking with you. You'll repeat that so everyone gets to be a presenter. And you should know that Danique and I are going to try to pop in where we can and hang for, to hear one of those cycles through. Any questions? Say it again, Danique.
Now, ultimate goal is to get you to share and ideate, like create some ideas. Because once things get going, you don't have that time. So this is your time to share and just build off each other's ideas of innovation.
That sounds great. So we want you to make this work for you. You don't have to, so don't follow a script, but make this work for you. Make sure everyone has some equity and has some time. That's most important. We're going to get started. Anna's going to take us out. If you have it. Danique, was that good? You feeling good?
I mean, yeah, I hear, I'm hearing, I think we need to push and reimagine the LTI, turn that I into interest.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of that, and I think still some need is more encouragement on advisory.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm ready to rock. Let's do it. They're here.
So we're gonna woo-saw a little bit.
Ready to rock.
We're gonna woo-saw a little bit and bring it down. I don't have the right music, and I don't know if you have any soft something you can play in the background.
We need to have the song you sang in the background.
Please, no, we don't. The thing we want to do at this time, you're already doing, is often you want to hear from everybody, like, what did you get out of this? But I think this might be almost like a vision board for all of us. So I want to take a moment to hop on Padlet. Many of you are doing so already. It's a link that should be in the chat. When you get there, you can just double click onto this Padlet and offer something that you think is helping or can help folks right now, leaders and really anyone, as we think about how do you act wildly and how do you kind of adapt to a new paradigm. What is something that you either got out of that or you want to share with others? The way this can be a vision board is, I know Danique's going to talk about this in a minute, but when you are back in your space and we're in October and things are wherever they are, you can kind of look back to this and say, these are the things that we said were really powerful and important. And it could be a link to something that might be great to kind of go back to. It could also be just a word. I see people putting that. So what did you get out of that last conversation that you're hoping to implement, do, and we'll play a little soft music. You got anything to cue up, Danique, or should I? Oh, you couldn't even hear it. Okay. Well, the bell went. Thank you all for adding your thoughts to this Padlet, and you can refer to it. You can download it, make it a PDF if you so choose, and use it in the future. Danique.
All right, so we wanted to just we wanted to embrace the moment. We didn't want to talk about big picture stuff from circa 1996 to 2019, because this is a new epoch in time. And so we wanted to embrace that and understand what leadership is during this time. And there's some just references and resources for you to think about. And one thing is this, and the story of Ruby Bridges highlights this. Brown versus Board took place somewhere, I think it was don't quote me, I think 58. But it took 7 years for Ruby Bridges to be allowed to enter a school. So 7 years after, something changed. And what I'm getting at is, no matter what law, no matter what rule, no matter what happens, no matter what change you want to implement, there's going to be pushback. It's called institutional entrenchment. Most people don't want to change, okay? And you cannot change what you're willing to tolerate. So as you try to do any innovation, you have to keep in mind that people and that the nature of us we are going to want to, I'm not even ready for that one yet. We're going to want to push back. So the math teacher that is good and really great in class, who might have to do something through Zoom, is going to push back. All right, so you have to figure out how do you push them to adapt and support them in that. And people will want to fight, and they want ease of use. They want things to be a little easier, and that's not really going to happen. So I have a quote that says, and it's from Heifetz. He talks about something called adaptive leadership. All right, Ronnie Heifetz. It's a good book for leaders because it talks about leaders don't always have the answers. Adaptive leadership is a way of getting the answers when the answers are unknown. And people are going to want answers, but it's a lot of unknown that you have to embrace. So there's one resource. Another quote is from Dr. William Julius Wilson, who talks about institutional entrenchment and it relates to race. A lot of things have changed related to race, at least in law, but not in act. So although you're going to make some changes in design, consider implementation and consider the pushback that you might get as part of your plan, because there's going to be somebody to push back, whether it's a kid, a parent, or whether it's another teacher or another school leader. All right, so those are some things to keep in mind. People do not like to change. They have an immunity to change. It's a survival instinct. Okay, so it talks about adult development and how adults don't like change. We just don't. So just think about those things. And then there's this quote, and you don't need to look at me for this. It's all about this. The great Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan. So he gets punched in the mouth. This is 1 year that's going to hit us every day with a new punch, a gut punch, a punch to the jaw. It's going to be, we're going to have bout after bout, and we got to be ready for round after round. And we got to do it because that's what we're in. That's the job that we're in. And we love the kids. And we have to spread the love and just guide them through this movement of a year. And it's just something to keep in mind as you plan. Know that your plan is not going to always work as planned, and natural instinct is going to be not to change, even though you want to. Even us at big picture have to embrace that. We have to continue to change. So just consider that, and thank you for listening.
I would say in the last final 2 minutes, maybe if you want to just think about the people who are your champions and your supporters, because I think, and if it's not people, it's a resource, right? So, it may be a book, a quote, And to find that thing and hold on to it, put it somewhere in your office or on your phone. Make sure you have that person on your favorite so you can get to them when you need it. Because when you do get the punch, as Danique is describing, you're going to need someone to help you get back up. Whatever that is the thing that might recenter you. So I would say get that and put that somewhere now before things start happening. And the last thing I'll say is I'm really digging Sonia Renee Taylor these days as my folks I work, my colleagues know. There was I'll share maybe on that Padlet, I'll add her 1 hour long show that she did where she was keynoting, I guess, in a workshop. And some of the things that she said that were really beautiful, she said that it's that we need to forge ahead. And that forging ahead, she said, when there's a fire, the things that survive the fire are the things that are the strongest things. And the rest of it is ash, right? And she said, so she left us with 3 questions as we, kind of get out of the normal. And I'll just share a few of them. So one, what in me and my school has been strong enough to withstand this fire, COVID-19 and all this stuff? That was one question. What am I grateful to have seen burnt away about my school? And the last question, after the flames are extinguished, what will be the most precious to have survived? What is the thing that you care about? She went on to talk about love and really said, how do we build accountability so that people are, we're creating circumstances to hold accountable all the things that are not love. And I really thought that was dynamic and beautiful because I think that's the thing that is going to stand. And so how do we do that? How do we hold ourselves accountable for making sure love happens? And with that, we thank you for joining the Puzzle Pieces Podcast, episode 1. There will probably be a 2, right, Danique?
That's right.
A 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. And so we hope that you got something out of this and join us again at the next one.
Yeah, we're actually thinking about writing off the year with maybe, a topic a week or 2. So see what happens.
All right. And thank you to our tech team. And we'll see you at the next episode.